Hello, Danvers, and welcome. I'm Isiah Young, and this week's host of the Let's Talk About Race Recap. This week, week 5, we talked about how talking is great, but what more can we do? This week, I'm joined by Jasmine Ramon, the Director of Equity and Inclusion in Danvers. So Jasmine, what are a few of the conclusions the group came to this week?
Yeah, Isiah. So as you said, we wrapped up the series this week, which was really kind of sad. But because it was the last session and we were really trying to focus on how we shift from these great conversations into more action-oriented steps, I did give them a little more structure than I have in the past. So I basically brought them into the space and said, all right, by the end of this hour and a half that we're together today, you have 2 tasks. Your first task is to come up with one tangible goal that you as an individual can take to continue this conversation. And the second one was, in your groups, I want you to brainstorm ideas of things that we as a community, as a larger community, can do to continue this conversation. Because as you know, my role in Town Hall, I'm a department of 1, right? And this work is so beyond one person. So I really wanted to empower our residents to think about, well, what can I put on my shoulders and what can I call my neighbor into? Mm-hmm. And so out of that, when we talked about the individual tasks, everyone had to write them down on a Post-it and stick it on our wall of accountability, we called it. And the thing about setting goals like this is they really have to be specific. It's easy to say, I'm going to continue to educate myself, but that's big, right? That's vague. But when you hold yourself accountable to a very particular thing that has a time frame, you find you're more likely to achieve that goal. So for example, the goal I gave myself was, before the summer is over, I'm going to reach out to our partners at the Heathmere Center for Cultural Engagement over in Beverly and see about the possibility of bringing their living room conversations here to Danvers. And their living room conversations are actually the next step of these kinds of conversations we've been having. So they're a little more facilitated, they're a little deeper, and they really start to get at the meat of things, whereas we were kind of scratching the surface. That was my goal. But I did take the liberty of writing down some other goals that came up. You want to hear them?
Of course.
So there were a few folks in the space who mentioned reading specific works by Ibram X. Kendi, author of How to Be an Anti-Racist, and also with Jason Reynolds, he wrote Stamped, which I believe the elementary schools read here in Danvers. They talked about reading that by the end of the year. Someone mentioned watching the 1619 Project on Hulu with a friend and discussing it. Someone mentioned doing a virtual book club, even within their own family, which I thought was really cool. I know, I was like, can my family do that? And so those were a couple of the highlights, but if you want to see, if the community wants to see other goals that your neighbors and other residents came up with, actually our wall of accountability is still up in the library and will be for at least till the end of this week with these other individual ideas that came out of the conversation. Do you have any ideas or goals you'd set for yourself?
I mean, I think I have a goal for myself. I think by the end of my next academic year, so I'm starting college up this fall, so I hope by my sophomore year, beginning of my sophomore year, I have more experience in this field specifically. I think next summer I want to go and intern with, I don't know exactly where, but I think I want to intern somewhere in this field so I can get more experience and better understand diversity, equity, and inclusion.
I love that. My goal for you would be to come back and intern with me again, but that's selfish. Go spread your wings and get more experience. Do you want to hear what some of the group goals were?
Yes, I'd love to.
Okay, so some of the group ideas that I thought were really cool, someone suggested what it would look like to connect with other neighboring towns and cities. They're like, let's take this series regional. And I was like, I love that. That's really cool, because we were fortunate to be visited by some of our neighbors, some folks from Middleton, Peabody, and so on. Someone also talked about identifying community events that are already happening that we could use to showcase even more cultures and backgrounds. So like the Downtown Rewind that Falcon Fest put on, or even the summer concert series that already exists, maybe bringing in more acts from different cultures for that. Working with the Danvers Historical Society on events perhaps about the history of different groups here. Storytelling. just, again, more events to share about one another. So I thought that was kind of sweet. Someone also mentioned having a book club, which I would want to put a shameless plug in, actually. The library, our public library, is doing an anti-racist book club hosted by Jenny Santamaro beginning this fall. So I feel like that's a really cool one that's already going to happen as next steps. And then there was a particular group of people who want to meet up again, from a couple folks who have come to more than one. They want to meet up again to plan more concrete action items for next steps. So if there is anyone interested in connecting with that group, feel free to reach out to me at jramon@danversma.gov, and I'm happy to put you in touch with that group of residents who seem to want to organize more amongst themselves. So it was a very, as you can tell, fruitful conversation, and I had a lot of notes by the end of it.
Well, as we've both mentioned, this is the final week and it's finishing up our series. So overall, how do you think it went?
It was really good. I almost felt emotional closing it out the other day because I didn't know what to expect, and I really was troubleshooting, and there were so many different models of how to have this conversation that I didn't know what would work. But as much as people were like, thank you so much for doing this, it felt like, no, thank you all for coming and making this happen. And actually, I did use the opportunity to ask different people to share out some of their reflections on the experience. And it was really heartwarming to hear folks say, now I have a better sense of belonging and I feel more welcome in this community, or now I know who to reach out to or to connect to continue doing this work and have someone hold me accountable to do this work. There was even a gentleman who expressed, though a lot of the conversations, people brought up beliefs and things that he didn't agree with, and he felt like we were just scratching the surface on a lot of things. He was like, I want more in depth, and I wanted to hear more about history and systems, and that even was reassuring to me because, again, it represents that there's appetite in the community for this conversation, no matter what your cultural or political background is. So it was really nice to hear, even from someone who is like, I don't really share the sentiments of the room, but I still want this conversation. I liked that too.
I think for me, like starting out from like my first day as your intern to like now this whole series, I've personally like learned a lot, and I've gotten to know a lot of people in the community, and I'm thankful for meeting all these people because now I've personally learned a lot. They've taught me a lot, and I also realized that a good chunk of what I thought I knew, I was not wrong per se, but I was misguided. And this series has really educated me, and it's really helped me better understand the things that where I was lacking before.
I love that.
A big one, intersectionality. Learned what that was. Awesome. I love intersectionality. Danvers, thank you so much for watching. So Jasmine, where can they find us next?
Yeah, so talking about race doesn't end here. Isiah and I are actually in the works of planning a slightly larger segment just to go over this Let's Talk About Race Summer Series one more time, to really give folks who couldn't attend in person the opportunity to get a little more of a taste of what the conversation was from some of our participants who showed up multiple times throughout the series. So stay tuned for that, and we're hoping to bring that to you before the summer is up. Again, thank you so much, Danvers, for your participation, and keep talking.